Hello, and welcome to today's webinar on starting the year with dynamic technology to create a classroom culture of discovery with Classpad.net. For the sake of webinar quality, everyone will be automatically muted and all videos turned off. If you have a question, please type it in the chat panel, and I, as the moderator, will respond back or ask the presenter, Dr. Karen Greenhouse, to respond to the entire group. As I mentioned, my name is Amy Chow, and I will be moderating tonight. And we have Dr. Karen Greenhouse with us, who will be presenting on Classpad.net. So Karen.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. As Amy said, I am Karen Greenhouse, and I've been teaching in classrooms and supporting, teachers for a really long time now. And one of the things that I help teachers do is integrate technology. And a lot of the things that I hear are, well, I don't use technology with students because I don't have time to teach them the technology. So the goal for today is to actually give you some ideas on how to start the school year using technology and learning math without actually having to take, days to learn the technology. So I'm just going to share some ideas that I have used with my own students in my middle and high school. Now, this was years ago, but when I was doing Sketchpad back in the day, but it's what I do with teachers now when I'm working with Classpad. So I'm going to be using Classpad.net. I'm hoping that you join us. So I'm going to first just kind of go into Classpad.net and talk about what it is. And if you're on with us, please sign on. You can just start playing without having an account. And that's sort of what I would hope that you're going to do, because I want you to experience how easy it is to start playing with Classpad and doing mathematics without technically knowing the technology. So let me share my screen here. And I'm hoping it is going to share the correct screen. Please let me know, Amy, if you can't see things.
Looks good.
All right. So I have two different things here. On the right is sort of my agenda, how we're going to work through this. And I can share this document with you in the chat panel, but also in the follow-up email that we usually send. But I wanted to talk about Classpad.net first, for those of you who are not familiar with it. So Classpad.net is a free web-based math software, and it is free for teachers, it's free for students, and it's basically a workspace that you can do pretty much whatever math you want. And this is the landing page, Classpad.net, and notice that it has things for classroom and for businesses. So if any of you work for publishing companies, this is a great kind of behind the scenes tool to use for assessments and textbooks. But it has a lot of resources and it's free to use. So those of you who are with us online right now, if you just go to this link and hit start exploring, it's going to open up Classpad.net. And Classpad.net allows students to do graphing and calculations and geometry. And so I'm going to kind of explore that with you today and how you might start your class, even from day one, with students when they first come in, starting to explore the technology while also doing mathematics. So I'm going to actually hit start exploring, because this is what I would do with students. I would have them open up Classpad.net and say, we're going to be using this tool a lot in the classroom, and I want to spend our first day or two here just kind of exploring it. What do you find out about it? And that is something that you need to accept about students. They are way more tech savvy than we are ourselves. And so if you just give them some time to play, they actually learn a lot more about the technology than we could ever officially, quote, teach them. And we will teach them things as we move along, but let them spend that first day or two. And so you'll notice in my activity over here, I would suggest doing something like this day one or day two. I know day one tends to be full of rules and stuff, but how exciting for a student to come into a math classroom and guess what? We're going to open a computer and we're going to start playing with math. So I kind of like to do it on day one because it sort of gets them excited about mathematics. It helps them start working together, even if they don't know each other, because it's a very non-threatening type of activity. And I'm going to show you what I mean right now. So hopefully those of you who are online are opening to this page. And if this were my students, the first thing I might do is say, this is a tool we're going to be using throughout the year. I am going to ask you to eventually, sign up for an account so that you can save all your work. It's going to be a great place for you to, save your work, do your graphs, do your calculations, give me your homework, those types of things. But I did want to explore kind of basically what it is. So it looks like a blank screen. And I want you to think of it that way, as a blank piece of paper. And what I would want to make sure students know before I just let them go off and play is how to find some things. And so I'm going to tell them that you're going to just start playing and finding things out for me. But a couple places that might help you if you get stuck or you want to explore a little bit more is you'll see a question mark up here at the right. And if you click that, there's this user guide. And I want you to click, I'm going to just show you that right now. But as we're playing a little bit later, if you want to find something specific to do, you could go to the user guide. So let's just see what it looks like. So the user guide is very specific visualizations of each of the things that Classpad can do. So you'll notice that it has, how do you operate your paper? How do you resize things? How do you change the color? So that's something. Let's say they go into geometry. If they click geometry, it's going to show them how to draw a line segment, how to draw a polygon, how to measure. So I want to make sure they see that resource right up front before they start playing, because what happens is a lot of students are like, oh, I'm going to go right into geometry or right into graphing, and I want to figure out how to graph a function. They could go right to the help section if that's what they want to do. Choice. So let's go back here to the guest. So I want to make sure they know how to do that first, just kind of an overview. The next thing I would do is right before they do their playtime is tell them that this is a blank screen and they can do whatever they want. And the way to choose what they want to do is to click anywhere. So I would want to model this and demonstrate. So those of you who are working with me, if you click anywhere on the screen, and by that, I literally mean anywhere. I can click anywhere. Notice once I click that I get these choices that pop up. And this one right here is grayed out because I'm in as a guest. And this choice comes up when I have an account. So right now we're going to ignore the financial, but what I'd want students to notice is that no matter where they click, they can choose to do a calculation. They can choose to do graphing, geometry, data, sequences, and text. And that's all that I would show them. So where could they get some support, some help if they want to find something specific? And what could they do? What are all the choices they could do? So I would go over that first. So notice that in my little activity over here to the right, whole class, I would just kind of show them the platform, make sure they knew where the help was and what the layout possibilities are. And then I would, and this again depends on your classroom. A lot of students, especially after last year with the remote situation, have their own device right now, tablet, iPad, PC, whatever it might be. And so I'm hoping that in my classroom situation that they have a tool, a device that they could then individually start exploring. If that is not the case, then you might have to kind of adjust how you're doing this. Maybe you have to pair them up if you only have enough for, every other student. But ideally, it would be nice for individuals to explore on their own. So they're not feeling pressure from anyone else and they're totally going on what they're interested in. So I'm going to actually give all of you just, I'm not going to give you as long as I would if I were with my students. But right now I want every one of you to just spend like the next minute finding one interesting thing. So you'll notice in this activity, what I would do with students is I want you to spend the next 15 to 20 minutes and discover 10 interesting things that you can do with Classpad. So you're giving them free rein and every student is discovering their own things. And we're going to come back and talk about it. And in that process, we're going to learn a ton about Classpad.net because everyone's exploring different things. And so then it becomes a really interesting and engaging activity. So I'm going to give you guys just a minute to just find something interesting that you have never done before with Classpad. If you've worked with it, and if you've never worked with Classpad, find one interesting thing right now. You have like a minute. All right, so keep playing if you're having a good old time with that. But what I would then do with students is actually have them, so part of this process especially in that first week of school, is helping students learn how to work together and share and collaborate. Because in my classroom, that's something I did a lot. We did a lot of little group work, a lot of sharing. We did a lot of talking. So I want them to learn that that's the culture of my classroom right up front. So you've just done something individually. Now I want you to partner up with the person next to you, elbow partner, however my classroom might be arranged, and share 2 cool things you discovered. So I'd give them some time to pair up and share 2 cool things, because that is a very non-threatening way to have them talking to someone about mathematics, about this software tool, but there's no pressure on, did I get it right or wrong? They're just sharing a cool thing that they learned. So I'd give them time to do that. And then I would pull the class together, and I would have a chart paper or some type of place where I would write down things that they found out about Classpad.net. So this is my first day or 2 at school. I'm helping students learn to talk to each other, and we're also learning some cool things about this technology we're going to use. So I'm going to just ask you in the chat panel to write down one thing you discovered that you thought was pretty interesting. And I'm going to use the text feature of Classpad to kind of create a list. In a classroom, I might do it on Classpad.net, or I might just have a chart paper that then I leave up anchored to the room. So let's just write down a couple interesting things. All right. So one interesting thing is you can plot points on the graph. That's so somebody obviously was exploring the graph. Amy, do you see anything else interesting? I'm just going to grab a couple here. Oh,
someone liked that they could graph in color.
Oh, okay. You can change the color.
Yes.
Someone discovered, great. You can just draw in geometry. That is one of my favorite things too. So obviously, if you have a classroom of students, I'm going to stop now so that, I value your time here. But if you had a classroom of students, and this is day 1 or 2, however, when you're doing this, you're going to get a much larger list, right? They've all explored different things, and they all wrote down 10 interesting things, and maybe some of them are repeated, but we're going to have a really nice comprehensive list. And what happens is, say somebody says, oh, you can draw with geometry, and I'm a student who didn't do that. What am I going to do? I'm going to immediately pull up the geometry thing and see what they're talking about, right? So we are learning about things we may not have discovered ourselves, but someone else did. And so we're learning how important it is to listen to other people. So lots of things going on here in a very non-threatening, fun, exploratory way. So that first day or 2 of math class is, we've been talking, we've been doing technology, we're exploring math. Wow, this is going to be fun. So after this day, the next day, the next time, so however you did this, day 2, day 3, we're going to get a little bit more specific about Classpad.net. So the next thing that I would do, because they are going to be using this tool often, so when they come in the next day, and notice that it's only like a 15 to 20 minute part of the class. You don't need to spend the whole day doing this. It's more, let's just get a snippet. Let's get a little bit more familiar. Let's do a little bit more math specific stuff, right? So day 2 is where I would want them to be focused more on probably the most used stickies in the software for what I teach, let's say. So if I look at this, we're going to use calculating a lot. We're going to use graphing a lot. We're going to use, especially if I'm teaching a geometry course, we're going to use geometry a lot, and we're going to use data. So data is our tables and our graphs and, statistical plots and 1 variable, 2 variable statistics. So these are the 4 that tend to be used very frequently, depending on what math you're teaching. And then obviously text sticky as well, but that sort of just kind of comes into play with all of these. So what I would do on day 2 is I would have them grouped into small groups, and there's, it's day 2 or day 3. So you don't know your students, so you don't know what good groups are. So you could do some random grouping, however you do that, but have them in small groups where each group only has, 1 computer or device between them, right? So now you're working on grouping strategies as well. So you're in your small group, and choose someone who's going to run the computer or device. And then the other people are going to offer suggestions. You could even have them switch off, those types of things. So you're kind of teaching them how to work together. But what we're going to do, and I like to call this is the jigsaw approach to things, is each group. So let's say I have a class of 30 students. We're being realistic here. So I might have 10 groups of 3, and I only have basically 4 stickies I'm going through, right? So maybe I assign 3 groups the calculate sticky, 3 groups the graphing sticky, 2 groups, whatever it is. So I assign more than one group to one of the stickies. And the rules are each one of you is now going to, each group, you're going to explore just that sticky. And I want you to find out, and you can use your help menu up here, but I want you to find out at least 2 things about that sticky that are maybe important for it. So each group's been assigned a sticky. Some groups have the same sticky, and that's fine. That's the idea here. But each group then goes and has 15, 20 minutes to just focus on what they've been assigned. So let's say I assign you guys are all in a group, and I assign you guys let's do the data sticky. So I'm going to give you just a minute. You're not going to have a lot of time as my students would, but you have a minute now to open the data sticky and discover some things about it, right? So if you want to figure out how it works, I'm going to recommend to each group that they actually go into that user guide and go to that sticky specifically and see if they can practice and figure things out from that sticky. So for you all, I've just assigned you the data sticky. Why don't I see it? There it is, statistical calculations. And so notice in the help menu, it actually has these really nice images that kind of walk through things. So it gives them an example. It's showing them how to create those statistical calculations, how to do graphing. So I would recommend to every group that they actually use the help guide as well. So maybe one person is looking at the help guide. So actually maybe 2 computers, now that I think about it, they need at least 2 computers maybe, because so someone could be looking at the help and then telling the person running things, try this, do this. So I'm going to give you just a couple minutes to explore data. All of you are going to explore data, and we'll maybe collect some information on that in just a minute. Okay, I know the time I'm giving you is not enough. In a classroom, you would give them a lot more time to discover things. But when they come back, you'll notice that my suggestion is not to have them just share out, but to have each group. So each group's been assigned a sticky, and every sticky has at least 2 groups that have been assigned to it, is to have the groups get up in front of the classroom and demonstrate 2 things that they figured out about the sticky, right? So maybe a group, so we're going to focus on the data sticky. So maybe the first group that comes up to present. And so then this is a really good classroom culture thing, is everyone needs to listen, because everybody is learning from this group, because I didn't do the data sticky, but this group did. So I need to listen so that I'm learning more about that sticky. So this is a great way for students to also be learning that they need to listen to each other, and that they can learn from each other and not always just from the teacher, right? So each group would then get up and present 2 interesting things, or 2 things they found out about that sticky they've been assigned to. So maybe we go, so we're doing the data sticky. So one group gets up and they say, well, one thing we noticed is that if you select a column, this menu option comes up at the bottom, and you can do calculations and regressions. And so we looked at a calculation, and we wanted to see what one variable was. So when we clicked it, it gave us, the mean, and some things we didn't understand depending on the level. We don't know what min X means or Q1, but these are things that come up. And so each group would then present their two things. And so the next group that gets up, if it's the same sticky, has to give you two different things. So they can't repeat what another group has done on that same sticky. They have to give you two more things. So if you have three groups doing the same sticky, there's going to be 6 interesting things or functionality that is shared about that sticky for everyone in the class. And you could have the class taking notes or however you're going to do it. But this is just, again, a way for the students to be learning from each other. They're learning about specific skills within each sticky, and they're also making connections to each other, that type of thing. So this is sort of how I would then have that second day of exploration. So it's still just exploration and there's no real threat and they're working together, but they've learned a little bit more specific about each sticky. So that's sort of how I would gauge the first couple of days. So we've learned about the technology. We've played with the technology. We're now learning specifics. So that's the first 2 or 3 days of class. We've learned how to work together. And now the next thing is to actually start doing some specific mathematics. So this is where you can pull in. So if you look at my paper over here, the next thing I'd suggest is actually pull in some ready to use activities that are review topics. So it all depends on what you're teaching, but Classpad.net, and I'm actually going to log in to show you some things here. So as I mentioned, this is a free tool and you do not have to have an account, but the advantage of having an account is you can save all the work that you do, because if you don't have an account, nothing is saved. You can share the work you do, which is what I'm going to demonstrate in just a minute. And you also can find ready-to-use activities. There are hundreds of ready-to-use activities that Casio has created, but also that other users create and share just for free use. And so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's already things out there. So I'm going to log in just to kind of show you some of that. But here I am back on that landing page. And oh, here we go. If you look up here at the top, it says activities. I just want to show you this because this is sort of where I got the activity I'm about to share with you guys. But there are hundreds of activities that you can access if you're logged in, but you can also just access them from this homepage. So if I click activities, you'll see that it's organized by the stickies that we just investigated. So that's a pretty cool thing. So if we just discovered stuff about the data. So if I go to the, actually, Amy, is that, oh, that is true. I want to go into data. There we go. So here are algebra activities based on data. Here's algebra 2. So you could really be very specific. And these activities are free, ready to use. And you just click on them. I'm just going to randomly click on this activity. And it opens up an activity that students can just start working on. So this is what I would suggest for the day 3 or 4, is they've explored the last 2 days, kind of what is the tool and how do the stickies work. And now let's actually look at something that's kind of ready to use, and I can now start doing math with the tool. But some of the math, it's going to be simplified math because there's an activity that's already set for me with some description. So this is an example of an activity that's ready to use. So that's what I mean in this day 3 and 4. You can actually start doing mathematics with the tool, still with very little, official training, but they're going to start being able to use the math. So I want to go back. This is a ready to use activity. Whereas I'm going to go back to the landing page. Here we go. And just show you logging in, because there's another way to get to activities if you have an account. So my suggestion is that you definitely sign up for an account and that your students sign up for an account, because then they're going to be able to save things that they do. They can do their homework with Classpad.net. They can do in-class activities with Classpad.net, and then they can share those with you. So I would suggest you do that, and it's all free. So I'm just going to log in here just to show you. So this is the difference between logging in as a user. You'll notice there's a couple features that are different compared to what you were doing as a guest. There's this cloud here, and that means that it's saving automatically. So anytime I'm in my account and working on something, it saves everything I'm doing automatically. I don't have to remember to do that, which is fantastic for students. This little button right here is duplicating. So I am going to show you what that means in just a minute, but then here's that help button again. Here's how you change the colors. Here's how you change the settings. Hopefully that's something students figured out. I'm going to go over here to a paper stack. Again, this only happens if you're logged into your account. And I want to show you another way you can get to activities. So these are all the work papers I've created. So you'll see I have quite a few, and you can create folders, and we have a whole nother webinar on how to do all this. I'm not going to get into that, but you can organize your activities by topic, grade level, class level, however. But what I wanted to point out is another place to find activities when you're in your account is to go over here to public papers. And when you do that, it lists the most recently created ones from whoever. So again, these are coming from users all over the world. And they're just sharing them, and you have free access to them, but you can also search yourself. So if you know you're teaching, I don't know, let's say median, you can type in a keyword and hit search, and it'll pull from all the activities. And let's go to public. Let's see if there's any on public that mention the word median. And so there's some activities that are using the word median that I could then use. So instead of reinventing the wheel, there's an activity. So let's just open up this one and just see what it is. And in the process, I'm going to show you how to duplicate. So let's say I'm a teacher. I'm trying to find an activity that's appropriate for my students to review. So I kind of want to review prior knowledge from the year before. So let's say this activity pops up and I'm like, oh, I really like it. This is a free to use activity. It's not in my account. It's a free to use account. If I love it, here's where this button duplicate comes into fact. I say, okay, I love this activity. I'm going to duplicate it. And what happens is it doesn't look like anything happens. I'm not going to do it because, well, let's do it. If I hit duplicate and I'm in my account, what it does, you'll see it change. All of a sudden, there's now this cloud. And that means that paper has been copied into my account, and now it's mine. And I can modify it. I can change it. I can do whatever I want to it. So this is what I really mean about not reinventing the wheel. There's a lot of activities out there that you could utilize that are appropriate for what you're teaching. And you just duplicate them and modify as needed for your students. What I'd like to do is show you an activity. So if you look over here, my thing, day 3 or 4, I want you to, I suggest that you actually use a ready-made activity. And so I'm focusing on, I believe it is algebra. So what happens when you want to share an activity with students? Well, once it's in your account, I'm going to go here to these 3 dots. You can share it with your students. And what that does is allow you to create a URL, and you're going to put the URL, just send it to the students in their email, put it on your classroom website, and they just click on it and they all get to open that activity on their own page. So that's what I'm going to share right now with you. I have an activity that I think I created it, or I found, that I'm sharing on this day 3 with my students. So I have sent it to my students, however is it might be, maybe I made a tiny URL on the board, or they all have their computers and they can click on the link from my class page, but they go to it. So I'm going to put that in the chat panel for you right now. And I'm going to open it up here on my own. I created this activity as a homework URL, meaning they have to log in because I want them to actually submit it. And so it has a password. So everyone who's doing this with me, the password is example 1. Example 1. So if you're doing this along with me, type in that password. This is what my students would do. And then when you hit OK, it's going to open that activity. So every student, so notice I suggest that they work individually. Every student opens up this page, and you'll notice at the bottom, because I created it as a homework, it has a submit button or a save button. And so they get to work on this. So they're going to work individually. They're going to notice and wonder about it. So this is an example of a ready to use activity that is going to utilize the technology but very, very specific little activities, and they can work on it on their own because we've already spent a couple days exploring the technology, but now we're going to actually do math with it as well. So ready to use. This is an algebra. Maybe this is an algebra course, and I am reviewing slope. So that's what this activity is about. We're not going to spend a lot of time here because I'm looking at my time to make sure that we don't run out. But I would have students, do notice and wondering, and then pair up and share their notice and wondering. And then they're going to pair up and work on the activity together to try and answer some of the questions. So you'll notice this activity has, information, what is slope, it has real world examples, and then it has things for them to move and do and explore. So this activity, if you opened it from the link, you can actually move the points here and see the line and the coordinates change and the slope change. And so this is a review of slope and the slope formula and how do you find it. And so they're using the technology, they're doing mathematics, they can explore things, but they're not bogged down in how to use the technology. They're getting right into mathematics and they're reviewing concepts. And so notice they're using text boxes to write their observations, and then we might share as a whole group. And then they're going to use, I'm just kind of pointing out some of the things that this activity is helping them with. It's helping them learn to use the calculate sticky, the graphing. No, this is actually the geometry sticky. And then they're going to make some connections, and then we're going to pull them all back. And when students are done, they're working on this together with their partner, but each of them has it individually. They save it. So this is where they want to have their own account. So when they save it, I want you to see what happens. When I hit save, when the student hits save, you should see it creates a URL. So each student now has their own URL. So basically their copy. If we want to equate this to say worksheets, each student has their own worksheet now, and their worksheet has their name on it, which in this case is their own URL. So they have their URL, they copy the URL. That's what they send to me. So maybe we submit our work on a Google, page, classroom page, and they submit their URL with their name on it to me. They also, I'm going to copy that. When they have finished, they've saved it to their own paper, and now they're ready to submit, meaning they're telling me they're done. They hit submit, and basically on my page, it shows me that if I have 10 students or 30 students, that 25 students submitted their work, I'm still missing 5. It's kind of that hint. But then I should see 25 URLs in my Google Sheet or however students share documents with me. So it's really nice. You can have students working together, but each doing their own individual work. So if you're thinking about that accountability, but they're able to talk and share and write their own explanations. So this is where I would go on day 3 or 4. So we are still using the technology, but we're doing mathematics now. And day 4 or 5, maybe get a little bit more complicated, like find an activity that has them do a little bit more. So let me explain what I mean by that. I'm going to share this activity with you in the chat panel. Feel free to open that up. Oops, perhaps I did not do that correct. Okay, and so the password on this one is example 2, for those of you who are opening it up. So this is an example of like a day, the next day, a little bit more technology use than maybe say the first activities. And what I mean by that, so this is a geometry activity, just as an example. And so this is maybe for students who are reviewing polygons. They've already done that, and I just want to see what they know. Maybe it's an assessment. So they have quadrilaterals or non-quadrilaterals. They have to write a description. They can explore, here's a quadrilateral. What are all the things you notice? And so they're going to write down their noticings, observations here, talk to each other. And then they're going to get into specific types of quadrilaterals, right? So here's some definitions, and they have to tell me which one is which and why. And finally, at the end, they have to try to construct their own examples of this. So this is using a little bit more technology because they're going to actually have to do their own constructions or whatever it might be. So if you were say in algebra, you might have them actually doing graphs of functions and finding key points and explaining those key points. So it sort of just depends what you're working with when you're with your students. But the idea here, if we look back from our first week of school. So again, this is something I suggest you do that first week of school. It gets students super excited about mathematics. They're doing mathematics, but they're doing it in a way where they're not threatened. And they're also learning about how to work together as partners, as small groups, as a whole class, how to listen to each other, how to do demonstrations, all very non-threatening. But first day, just let them play. That's really what the first day is about, is let them play, let them explore cool things and talk about it. And then the third day, you're going to get a little more specific, explore specific parts and have them then do demonstrations and explain, kind of teach each other. And then days 3 and 4, have them get into actual mathematics. That's reviewing. I would always suggest do it as sort of a review of prior knowledge. So find activities that are from concepts from the year before, but have them do some activities where they're doing and using the technology, but they're also really talking about math, because now you're kind of combining everything you did from day 1 and 2, learning how to work together, learning how to listen, but now we're actually doing mathematics. So it's just sort of a progression of introducing technology in a very non-threatening way and introducing your classroom culture in a very non-threatening way. And those are just my ideas. I will definitely share this paper with you. And remember to find activities. It's pretty easy. Sign up for your account. The quickest way, honestly, I really kind of like the finding activities from the homepage because of how it's organized. It's organized by the sticky. So, if I'm an algebra teacher, I'm probably going to go right into graphing, and you'll see that there's lots of algebra activities, algebra 2. And so I'm going to try and find something, here's something, systems of equations. So let's say I'm an algebra 2 teacher and I want to review systems of equations with my students right here at the beginning. I have found an activity right away. So that to me is the easiest, the best place to find the activities just because of how it's organized. But remember, you can also do it from the account. You have to have an account, but go in. Oh, well, apparently I don't have access to my account anymore. Not quite sure why it's giving me an error there. All right. Interesting. Let's see if we can. Amy, do we have a clue? Okay, let's check. It's very weird. All right. I don't know. Must have been a timed out issue. So once you're in, the other place to get activities is within from your account, and students can do this too. So they can find activities on their own because they have the same access you do. But to go to the search feature and search for a keyword. So let's just do systems again and do search, and you have different tabs, and public papers is where all of the activities from other people might be shared. Notice I have quite a few up here that I've shared. So I'm on a mission. So anyway, this was just some ideas on how to start teaching with technology where you're not taking a lot of time out of your classroom to teach them the technology. You're trusting in the students' ability to pick things up and to explore on their own. And then you're introducing the technology through mathematics so that they're kind of learning both at the same time. That's really the best way to integrate technology. Are there any questions?
No, I don't see any.
I
was able to answer most of them.
Okay. Did I leave anything out that you think I need to show them before? We do have a lot of previous webinars on demand where we actually go through how do you share papers with students? How do you create a homework? And that's also on our YouTube channel. So we'll make sure we share those links with you. But go to our YouTube channel. It has very specific how-tos and also webinars that are kind of focused on a lot of this stuff. So that's all on demand. You can watch that anytime you want.
Yes. All right.
Well, if there's no questions, then thank you so much for joining us and good luck with the year. I really hope you guys have a great year and that we stay in school this year. Though if you go remote, Classpad.net is your tool.
Yes,
So,
for sure.
yeah.
So thank you, Karen, for sharing all those ideas. I think that was a great way to start. And definitely even with, like you said, virtual classrooms and going remote, it's good to have the kids working on that, and they can maybe share their screen if that's allowed, when they are presenting. So that's really cool. So I just wanted to let you guys know that we are starting up our webinar series. We are doing 2 a month. One will be focused on our hardware, and one will be focused on Classpad.net. So you'll see the schedule there. I believe it's the second and third Wednesdays of every month at 7 p.m. Eastern, and you can register at casioeducation.com/educators/webinars. And follow us on social media if you're interested. And remember, as Karen mentioned, all the accounts are free, whether you're a teacher or a student. Students can use their Google Classroom single sign-in login to sign in. So that makes it a lot easier. And there's our YouTube page. So thank you guys so much for your time, and I hope you enjoyed.
Have a good year.